When the power grid goes down, your refrigerator becomes a ticking clock. You've got maybe 48 hours before everything inside starts to rot. And if you think that's not your problem, think again. Every major disaster in the last decade has proven one brutal truth. The people who survive aren't the ones with the most food. They're the ones who know how to keep it. So if you're serious about making it through the blackout, the collapse, or whatever crisis is coming next, you need to understand exactly how to preserve cold without electricity, and you need to understand it now. Subscribe to this channel because what I'm about to share could be the difference between eating and starving when everything else fails. Let's start with the cold reality. The average American household loses power for about 8 hours per year under normal conditions. But during hurricanes, ice storms, or grid failures, that number explodes. Hurricane Katrina left hundreds of thousands without power for weeks. The Texas freeze in 2021 knocked out electricity for millions, some for more than 4 days in sub-freezing temperatures. People lost everything in their freezers not because the cold disappeared, but because they didn't know how to manage it. Your freezer, when full and unopened, will maintain safe temperatures for about 48 hours. Your refrigerator gives you only 4 hours. After that, bacteria multiply exponentially. Salmonella doubles every 20 minutes at room temperature. E. coli thrives between 40 and 140 degrees Fahrenheit. One miscalculation, one open door at the wrong time, and your food storage becomes a biohazard. The first principle of keeping food cold without power is understanding thermal mass. A full freezer stays cold longer than an empty one because frozen items act as ice blocks, maintaining the temperature even when the compressor stops. This is why preppers stockpile frozen water bottles and milk jugs filled with ice. If your freezer is half empty, you're wasting critical thermal capacity. Fill every gap with containers of water. When the power goes out, those ice blocks become your lifeline. Each gallon of ice can absorb about 144 BTUs of heat as it melts, and that's not trivial. In a well-insulated chest freezer, strategically placed ice can extend your safe storage time from 2 days to nearly a week. But here's what most people get wrong. They open the freezer to check on things. Every time you open that door, you're bleeding cold air and introducing warm, moist air that accelerates thawing. Discipline is survival. You open it once, you assess, you close it, and you don't touch it again unless absolutely necessary. Now let's talk about real-world methods that actually work. The Zier pot, also known as an evaporative cooling chamber, has been used in arid climates for thousands of years. You take 2 terracotta pots, one smaller than the other, nest them together with a layer of wet sand in between, cover the top with a damp cloth, and place it in a shaded, well-ventilated area. As water evaporates from the sand and cloth, it draws heat away from the inner pot, dropping the internal temperature by as much as 20 to 30 degrees Fahrenheit below ambient. In northern Nigeria, rural communities use Zier pots to keep vegetables fresh for weeks without refrigeration. Tomatoes that would spoil in 2 days last 20. Carrots stay crisp for over a week. This isn't theory. It's proven technology. But it requires specific conditions: low humidity, good airflow, and consistent maintenance. In a humid environment, evaporative cooling becomes almost useless because the air is already saturated with moisture. You need to understand your climate before you commit to any preservation method. Then there's the icy ball, a chemical absorption refrigerator that predates electric refrigeration and runs on nothing but fire and ammonia. Developed in the 1920s, it was used by rural families and remote communities before power lines reached them. The system works through a thermal cycle. You heat one chamber containing ammonia and water, driving the ammonia gas into a second chamber where it condenses and releases heat. When you remove the heat source and place the first chamber in an insulated box, the ammonia evaporates again, absorbing heat from the interior and creating cold. A properly maintained icy ball can keep a small refrigerator space at near freezing temperatures for 24 hours after a single heating cycle. But here's the catch. Original icy balls are rare and expensive, and modern replicas require technical knowledge to build safely. Ammonia is toxic. If you don't know what you're doing, you risk poisoning yourself. This is advanced preparedness, not a beginner project. Let's shift to something more accessible: underground storage. The Earth maintains a relatively constant temperature below the frost line, typically between 50 and 55 degrees Fahrenheit in most temperate climates. That's not freezing, but it's cold enough to dramatically slow bacterial growth and extend the life of many foods. Root cellaring has kept vegetables, fruits, and preserved goods fresh for centuries. Potatoes, carrots, beets, turnips, cabbage, and apples all store exceptionally well in cool, humid, dark conditions. A properly constructed root cellar with good ventilation and insulation can maintain these temperatures year-round without any power input. During the Great Depression, families survived winters on root cellar stores. Even now, Amish and Mennonite communities rely on them as primary food storage. The key is location and construction. You need to dig below the frost line, ensure proper drainage to prevent flooding, maintain humidity between 85 and 95% for most vegetables, and provide ventilation to prevent ethylene gas buildup from ripening produce. Ethylene is a natural plant hormone that causes fruits and vegetables to ripen and rot faster. Apples produce massive amounts of ethylene. Store them near your potatoes, and you'll have sprouted, spoiled spuds in weeks. But what if you don't have the space or ability to dig a root cellar? You can simulate many of its benefits with a ground-level cold frame or a buried cooler. Take a standard ice chest, dig a hole deep enough to bury it up to the lid, insulate the top with straw or foam board, and cover it with a tarp and soil. You've just created a micro root cellar. During power outages, this becomes an emergency refrigerator. I've tested this personally during extended grid down scenarios. In autumn and winter, when soil temperatures drop, I've kept dairy products, eggs, and vegetables fresh for over 2 weeks in buried coolers. The temperature inside stayed consistently between 40 and 50 degrees, well within the safe zone. But you need to monitor it. Use a reliable thermometer, check daily, and understand that if your soil temperature rises above 60 degrees, you're losing effectiveness fast. Then there's the ice harvest method, something our great-grandparents understood intimately. Before refrigeration, ice houses were the backbone of food preservation. Communities would cut massive blocks of ice from frozen lakes and rivers in winter, transport them to insulated ice houses packed with sawdust or straw, and those blocks would last through summer. In the 1800s, the ice trade was a multi-million-dollar industry. Ice cut in New England was shipped to the Caribbean, India, and even Australia. The insulation was so effective that losses were minimal. You don't need an industrial ice house to apply this principle. If you live in a cold climate and have access to a deep freezer, you can create your own ice blocks in food-grade containers during winter or whenever you have power. When the grid goes down, those blocks become your refrigeration. A 40-pound block of ice in a well-insulated cooler can keep food at safe temperatures for 3 to 5 days. Stack multiple blocks, minimize air gaps, and keep the cooler in the coolest part of your home. And you extend that even further. Insulation is everything. Most people underestimate how much heat transfer occurs through conduction, convection, and radiation. Your cooler might have thick walls, but if the lid doesn't seal properly, if there are gaps around the drain plug, or if you place it in direct sunlight, you're hemorrhaging cold. I've seen preppers lose entire food stores because they didn't understand basic thermodynamics. Reflective insulation, like Reflectix or emergency blankets, can reduce radiant heat transfer significantly. Wrapping your cooler or freezer in multiple layers of insulation, burying it partially underground, and shading it completely can double or even triple your preservation time. Every degree matters. At 32 degrees, your food is frozen solid. At 40 degrees, it's refrigerated and safe. At 50 degrees, you're in the danger zone. At 60 degrees and above, spoilage accelerates exponentially. Let's address a critical misconception: dry ice. Many people think dry ice is the ultimate solution for long-term cold storage without power. It's not. Dry ice is frozen carbon dioxide, and it sublimates at -109 degrees Fahrenheit. That's cold enough to freeze-burn food if it's in direct contact, and it produces carbon dioxide gas as it sublimates. In an enclosed space, that gas can displace oxygen and create an asphyxiation hazard. You cannot use dry ice in a sealed container. You need ventilation, but used correctly, dry ice is powerful. A 10-pound block of dry ice in a well-insulated cooler can keep food frozen for 3 to 5 days, depending on conditions. The challenge is availability. During a widespread disaster, dry ice disappears from stores within hours. If you're planning to use it, you need to source it immediately when you know trouble is coming, and you need to handle it safely. Never touch dry ice with bare skin. The extreme cold causes instant frostbite. Always use insulated gloves or tongs. Now let's talk about strategic food selection. Not all foods require the same level of cold preservation. Hard cheeses, cured meats, fermented vegetables, dried grains, canned goods, and certain root vegetables can tolerate ambient temperatures far better than fresh meat, dairy, and leafy greens. If you're facing an extended power outage, triage your food. Consume the most perishable items first. Cook and eat your fresh meat within the first 24 hours while your freezer is still cold. Move to dairy and eggs next. Save your cured, dried, and canned goods for when fresh options are gone. This isn't just about reducing waste, it's about maximizing nutrition and minimizing illness. Spoiled food doesn't just taste bad, it can kill you. Botulism, one of the deadliest foodborne toxins, thrives in low oxygen, low acid environments. Improperly stored canned goods or vacuum-sealed meats that have thawed and refrozen become ideal breeding grounds. One meal contaminated with botulinum toxin can cause paralysis, respiratory failure, and death within hours. Water is your hidden ally in food preservation. When power goes out, fill every available container with water and freeze it if your freezer still has residual cold, even if you don't have power. In winter climates, you can freeze water outside and bring those ice blocks indoors to maintain cooler temperatures. During the siege of Leningrad in World War II, residents used winter ice to preserve food through one of the most brutal famines in history. They understood that cold is a resource, not a convenience. If you have access to snow, pack it tightly around your coolers and food storage. Snow is an excellent insulator, and as it melts, it maintains a consistent near-freezing temperature. But don't eat snow directly to stay hydrated. Melting snow in your mouth lowers your core body temperature and accelerates hypothermia. Melt it first, then drink. Let's discuss something most survival guides ignore: humidity control. Cold storage isn't just about temperature, it's about moisture. Too much humidity and you get mold, rot, and bacterial growth. Too little and your food desiccates, losing nutritional value and palatability. Root vegetables need high humidity. Grains and dried goods need low humidity. If you're storing mixed items in a root cellar or buried cooler, you need to separate them. Use breathable cloth bags for vegetables, airtight containers for grains, and never store onions and potatoes together. Onions release moisture and gases that cause potatoes to sprout and rot faster. These aren't minor details. In a survival scenario, losing a week's worth of food to mold because you didn't control humidity could be the difference between making it and starving. Alternative cooling methods exist that most people never consider. Geothermal cooling systems, used in modern green architecture, can be adapted for off-grid food storage. By running pipes deep underground and circulating air or water through them, you can create a passive cooling loop that maintains stable temperatures without power. This requires significant upfront construction, but once installed, it works indefinitely. Some homesteaders have built hybrid systems that combine root cellaring with geothermal cooling, achieving refrigerator-level temperatures year-round. It's not cheap, it's not quick, but it's permanent. Then there's the wind catcher, an ancient Persian design that uses airflow and evaporative cooling to reduce indoor temperatures. Tall towers capture wind, channel it down into underground chambers where it passes over water or wet surfaces, and the cooled air circulates through the structure. In desert climates, wind catchers can drop interior temperatures by 20 to 30 degrees without any mechanical systems. Modern preppers have adapted this for food storage, building small wind catcher-cooled storage sheds that maintain significantly lower temperatures than ambient. It's labor-intensive, it requires specific architectural knowledge, and it works best in arid regions, but it's a zero-energy solution that has preserved food for millennia. Here's a reality check. Most people won't build a root cellar, construct a wind catcher, or invest in geothermal systems. You need practical, immediate solutions that work right now. If the power goes out today, here's what you do. First, do not open your freezer or refrigerator unless absolutely necessary. Second, if you have ice or ice packs, consolidate them into the most efficient configuration possible, grouping frozen items tightly together to maximize thermal mass. Third, move your freezer or cooler to the coldest part of your home, basement if you have one, or a shaded exterior space if the weather is cold. Fourth, insulate aggressively. Blankets, sleeping bags, foam board, cardboard, anything that reduces heat transfer. Fifth, if you have access to dry ice or block ice, use it strategically, but ventilate properly. Sixth, triage your food. Eat the most perishable items first. Preserve what you can by cooking and canning, and accept that some loss is inevitable. Seventh, monitor temperatures obsessively. A simple fridge thermometer is cheap insurance. If your food storage rises above 45 degrees for more than 2 hours, you're entering the danger zone. Let's address a brutal truth. You will make mistakes. In a real crisis, stress impairs judgment. You'll forget to close the cooler lid completely. You'll open the freezer to check on something unnecessarily. You'll store incompatible items together. You'll misjudge how much ice you need. That's human. But those mistakes cost you food, and in a prolonged disaster, every lost meal matters. Train yourself now. Practice power outage scenarios. Turn off your fridge and freezer for 48 hours and see what happens. Test your coolers, your insulation methods, your ice block systems. Learn what works and what fails before your life depends on it. The time to discover that your cooler leaks air or that your root cellar floods is not when you're 3 weeks into a blackout and starving. Consider the cascading failures that occur during major disasters. In Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria, the power grid was destroyed for months. Refrigeration disappeared. Food imports stopped. People relied entirely on shelf-stable goods, but those ran out fast. Communities that had maintained traditional food preservation methods, salt-curing meat, sun-drying fish, fermenting vegetables, survived better than those who depended on modern refrigeration. This isn't romanticizing the past, it's acknowledging proven methods. Salt has been used for food preservation for over 5,000 years because it works. It draws moisture out of food, creating an environment where bacteria cannot thrive. A properly salt-cured ham can last for years without refrigeration. Fermentation, the process that gives us sauerkraut, kimchi, pickles, and yogurt, not only preserves food, but enhances its nutritional value. Fermented foods are rich in probiotics, vitamins, and enzymes that support gut health and immunity. In a survival situation, those benefits matter. Here's something most preppers overlook: the psychological impact of food spoilage. Watching a freezer full of meat rot because you couldn't keep it cold is demoralizing. It's not just about calories lost, it's about the mental toll of failure. You prepared, you stored food, and it still went to waste. That sense of helplessness can spiral into despair, and despair kills faster than hunger in survival scenarios. This is why mastering food preservation isn't optional, it's essential. Confidence in your ability to keep food safe, to adapt when systems fail, to solve problems under pressure. That confidence is survival fuel. It keeps you rational, focused, and capable when everything around you is collapsing. One more critical factor: community cooperation. In historical disasters, communities that pooled resources and shared knowledge survived at higher rates than isolated individuals. If your neighbor has a gas-powered generator and you have a stockpile of ice blocks, trade. If you know how to build a Zier pot and someone else has terracotta pots, collaborate. Survival isn't a solo sport. The lone wolf prepper fantasy falls apart when reality hits. You cannot do everything alone. You need skills, resources, and relationships. Build those networks now. Join local preparedness groups. Share knowledge. Help others develop their own food preservation systems. When the crisis comes, those relationships will be worth more than any stockpile. Let's close with this. The power grid is fragile. Cyber attacks, extreme weather, infrastructure decay, and geopolitical instability all threaten its stability. Experts aren't debating if a major long-term blackout will happen. They're debating when. The Department of Homeland Security has run simulations showing that a grid-down scenario lasting more than a month could result in mass casualties, not from violence, but from starvation, dehydration, and disease. Your ability to keep food cold without power isn't paranoia, it's preparedness. It's the difference between eating and starving. It's the difference between maintaining health and succumbing to foodborne illness. It's the difference between surviving and becoming a statistic. So if this information matters to you, if you understand that what I've shared here could save your life, then subscribe to this channel, like this video, comment below with your own experiences and methods. Share this with someone who needs to hear it before it's too late. And if you want to go deeper, you'll find in the pinned comment some guides and documents that can take your preparedness to the next level. Check them out when you're ready. The question isn't whether the power will go out. The question is whether you'll be ready when it does.